Not real cousins. I repeated, my coffee mug frozen halfway to my lips as I stared at my mother-in-law's latest Facebook post. There they were, all the grandchildren gathered at her lakeside home, wearing matching t-shirts with Cooper Cousins Day 2025 emblazoned across the front. All the grandchildren except mine. My name is Olivia Cooper, and at 34, I never expected to be explaining to my children why they weren't real enough to be included in family events. I married James 5 years ago, bringing my 2 children, Emma, 12, and Lucas, 9, into what I thought would be a loving extended family. James had always been wonderful with them, treating them as his own, but his mother, Eleanor, was a different story. "Mom, what are in the pictures?" Emma asked, peering over my shoulder at my phone. Her voice trembled slightly, though she tried to hide it. "Aunt Sarah's kids are there, and even baby Tommy." I set down my coffee, trying to keep my anger in check. There must be some mistake, sweetheart. Let me call Grandma Eleanor and find out what happened. But I already knew. This wasn't the first time Eleanor had pulled something like this. Last Christmas, she had forgotten to get Emma and Lucas presents while lavishing gifts on their cousins. At Easter, she had organized an egg hunt while we were accidentally given the wrong time to arrive. Eleanor answered on the 3rd ring, her voice syrupy sweet. "Olivia, dear, what a lovely surprise." "Eleanor, I'm looking at the photos from today's cousin gathering. Why weren't Emma and Lucas invited?" Of that, she paused, and I could practically hear her rehearsed excuse coming. "Well, you see, this was for the Cooper cousins. Blood family, you understand. I didn't want Emma and Lucas to feel out of place." My hand tightened around the phone. "They're part of this family, Eleanor. James is their father now." "Stepfather," she corrected quickly. "And while that's nice, it's not the same thing. I wanted a special day for my real grandchildren to connect with their heritage. Surely you understand." Before I could respond, I heard Emma's bedroom door slam upstairs. Lucas stood in the kitchen doorway, his comic book clutched tightly to his chest, eyes wide with hurt. "No, Eleanor, I don't understand," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "And I don't think James will either." "Oh, don't bother James with this," she said quickly. "He's so busy with work, and you know how he hates family drama. Besides, I'm doing you a favor. Those children need to understand their place." "Their place?" I cut her off. "Their place is with their family. All of it." She sighed dramatically. "Olivia, dear, you're being oversensitive. I have boxes of old Cooper family photos I'm showing the children today. Family history, legacy. These things matter." That's when something clicked. Family photos, legacy. I remembered James mentioning boxes in Eleanor's attic, albums his grandmother had kept, including photos from when his father was young. Photos that might tell a very different story about the precious Cooper family legacy. "You're right, Eleanor," I said, my voice suddenly calm. "These things do matter. Which is why I think it's time everyone saw all the family photos, including the ones from Grandma Rose's collection." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "What are you talking about?" "Oh, you know the ones, from when Robert first came into the family, before the adoption papers were finalized." Another pause, longer this time. I heard shuffling in the background, murmured voices. "I don't know what you're implying," Eleanor said finally, her voice tight. "I think you do. James's father, Robert, your precious keeper of the Cooper bloodline, was adopted at age 7. Grandma Rose kept all the documentation, along with some very sweet photos of the day he officially became a Cooper, not by blood, but by love, just like my children." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. I could almost see Eleanor's face, that perfect mask of superiority cracking as her carefully constructed narrative began to crumble. "Those albums are private family matters," she finally managed. "Exactly," I agreed. "Family matters. And since you're so interested in sharing family history today, I think it's time for all the cousins to see where they really come from. In fact, James and I would be happy to bring those albums over right now. For the sake of legacy, of course." I heard a commotion in the background, children's voices rising in excitement. "Grandma, are there more photos? Can we see?" That won't be necessary," Eleanor stammered. "Perhaps we should discuss this another time." "No," I said firmly. "I think now is perfect. After all, Emma and Lucas deserve to know their family history too. All of it." I ended the call and took a deep breath. looking up to see Lucas still standing in the doorway. "Mom," he asked quietly, "are we going to Grandma's house?" I held out my arms, and he came running into them. "Yes, sweetheart, it's time for everyone to learn what being a Cooper really means." As I held my son, I could hear Emma moving around upstairs, probably hiding her tears like she always did when Eleanor hurt her. But this time would be different. This time, I had more than just words to defend my children with. I had truth captured in faded photographs and yellowed documents, proof that family was about more than blood. I pulled out my phone to text James, "Meeting you at your mom's, bringing the albums from the attic. It's time for a real family history lesson." His response was immediate. "On my way, Mom's gone too far this time." I smiled, gathering my keys and calling up to Emma. Sometimes the best way to fight exclusion isn't with anger, but with evidence. And I had a feeling this special Cousin's Day was about to become truly special, just not in the way Eleanor had planned. The drive to Eleanor's lakeside home felt longer than usual, the box of old albums sitting heavily in the back seat between Emma and Lucas. Emma kept her eyes fixed on the window, but I caught her occasionally glancing at the worn leather covers, curiosity warring with hurt in her expression. When we pulled up to the house, I saw James's car already parked in the driveway. The sounds of children playing drifted from the backyard, along with the unmistakable aroma of Eleanor's famous barbecue, another family tradition my children had often been subtly excluded from. "Mom," Emma said quietly as we walked up the path, "what if Grandma Eleanor gets mad? What if she makes the other kids leave?" I squeezed her hand. "Then we'll know exactly where we stand." But I don't think that's going to happen. James met us at the door, his face tight with anger. "I can't believe she did this," he muttered, pulling me into a quick hug before kneeling to embrace Emma and Lucas. "You two are as much my children as any of those kids out there." Inside, Eleanor stood in her pristine kitchen, surrounded by perfectly arranged platters of food. Her face paled when she saw the box in my arms. "Olivia," she started, her voice sharp, "I told you this isn't necessary." "Actually, Mom," James cut in, "I think it's long overdue. Where are those matching shirts you had made? I believe Emma and Lucas deserve theirs." Eleanor's lips tightened. "James, be reasonable. This was meant to be a special day for family," he finished. "And last I checked, these are my children too. So either everyone gets a shirt and participates, or I start asking why you're so keen to hide Grandma Rose's albums." The mention of Rose's name made Eleanor flinch. In the doorway to the backyard, I noticed Sarah, James's sister, watching with growing interest. Her 3 children peered around her legs, still wearing their matching shirts. "What albums?" Sarah asked, stepping into the kitchen. "The ones from the attic. The ones showing how Dad came into the family," James replied, his voice carrying, "You know, before the adoption was finalized." Sarah's eyes widened. Dad was adopted. The silence in the kitchen grew thick. Eleanor gripped the edge of her granite countertop, her knuckles white. Outside, more cousins had wandered to the door, drawn by the tension in the air. "That was different," Eleanor finally managed. "Robert was just a child." "So are Emma and Lucas," I said quietly, setting the box on her immaculate counter. "Children who deserve to know their family history, all of it." With trembling hands, I opened the first album. There, preserved behind plastic, was a faded photograph of a young boy standing between a beaming couple, Rose and Henry Cooper. The date on the bottom read Robert's first day home, 1975. "Is that Grandpa?" Tommy, Sarah's youngest, asked, pushing forward for a better look. More children crowded around as I carefully turned the pages. There were photos of Robert's adoption day, family picnics, holidays, all showing a family bound not by blood, but by choice and love. "Grandma Eleanor," Emma said suddenly, her voice small but clear, "did you know Grandpa wasn't born a Cooper when you married him?" Eleanor's face flushed. "Of course I did. But that was different," I supplied. "Because he was younger? Because it was longer ago? Or because you spent so many years pretending it never happened?" Sarah moved closer, picking up another album. "Mom, why didn't you ever tell us this? All those times you talked about Cooper family heritage." "I was protecting the family name," Eleanor snapped, but her voice wavered. "Your father worked so hard to be a real Cooper." "He was a real Cooper," James interrupted. "From the moment Rose and Henry chose him. Just like Emma and Lucas are real Coopers now that I've chosen them. The backyard had gone quiet, all the children now clustered around the albums spread across Eleanor's counter. I watched as they pointed at photos, asked questions, made connections. The carefully constructed hierarchy Eleanor had built was crumbling with each turned page. "Look!" Lucas exclaimed suddenly, pointing to a Christmas photo. "Grandpa's wearing a shirt just like ours, but his says, 'Newest Cooper' on it." Something in Eleanor seemed to deflate. She sank into one of her kitchen chairs, looking suddenly older. "Mother Rose made that for him," she said quietly. She said everyone should know he was chosen, not just born, to be a Cooper." "That's beautiful," Sarah murmured, and I noticed tears in her eyes. "Mom, why would you try to hide this? Why would you make Emma and Lucas feel like they don't belong when Dad himself came to the family the same way?" Eleanor looked at her perfectly arranged platters, her matching shirts, her carefully curated family gathering. "I just wanted everything to be perfect," she whispered, "to look right." "This is right," James said firmly, putting an arm around Emma and Lucas. "This is exactly what family looks like, people choosing each other, loving each other, no matter where they came from." I watched as understanding slowly dawned on the children's faces. Tommy tugged at his shirt, then pulled it off and held it out to Emma. "We can share," he said simply, with the straightforward logic of a child. "That's what cousins do." One by one, the other children followed suit, creating a pile of Cooper Cousins shirts on the counter. Sarah disappeared to her car and returned with fabric markers. "Let's make new shirts," she announced, "for everyone." Eleanor sat silently as the children spread shirts across her pristine dining room table, adding their own touches, making sure everyone, blood-related or not, had one to wear. When Emma hesitantly approached her with a marker, asking for help with her name, I saw something crack in my mother-in-law's carefully maintained facade. "I'm sorry," she whispered, pulling Emma into an unexpected hug. "I've been so foolish." It wasn't a complete transformation. Years of prejudice don't disappear in a single afternoon. But as I watched Eleanor help Emma decorate her shirt, while Lucas showed his cousins more photos of their grandfather's childhood, I knew something fundamental had shifted. Sometimes the truth, preserved in forgotten photographs and hidden albums, has a power all its own. And sometimes the best way to break down walls is to simply show that they never should have been built in the first place. The afternoon transformed into something entirely different from Eleanor's carefully planned special cousins' day. The children sprawled across the lawn in their newly decorated shirts, sharing stories and comparing notes about the family photos they had discovered. Even Eleanor seemed lighter somehow, as if letting go of her carefully guarded secret had lifted a weight from her shoulders. I found her in the kitchen later, carefully wrapping leftover food while staring at a photo of young Robert with his adoptive parents. Her hands trembled slightly as she handled the image. "He was so happy that day," she said softly, not turning around. "Robert talked about it often when we were first married, how Rose and Henry chose him, how they made him feel special rather than different." She paused, her shoulders sagging. "Somewhere along the way, I forgot that lesson. I became so focused on maintaining this image of the perfect family that I became everything Rose warned me against." "It's not too late to change," I said quietly, moving to help her with the containers. "Emma and Lucas still have years ahead of them, years where they could know their grandmother's love." Eleanor wiped at her eyes quickly. "I've made such a mess of things, haven't I? All this time preaching about family legacy, when the real Cooper legacy was about love and acceptance all along." Outside, we could hear Emma's laugh mixing with her cousins' voices. It was a sound I hadn't heard at family gatherings before. Free, uninhibited, without the underlying tension of trying to fit in. "You know," Eleanor continued, her voice thoughtful, "Rose kept a journal. She wrote about Robert's adoption, about how some family members resisted at first, questioning whether he could ever be a real Cooper." She shook her head. "I've become exactly what she fought against." Just then, Lucas burst into the kitchen, his new shirt proudly displaying not just his name but drawings from all of his cousins. "Grandma Eleanor, Tommy says we can have a sleepover next weekend. Can we, please?" I watched Eleanor's face soften as she looked at my son, her grandson, practically bouncing with excitement. I think that would be wonderful," she said, her voice catching slightly. "We could go through more of the old albums. I'm sure there are stories about your grandfather that you'd love to hear." Lucas's face lit up, and he rushed back outside to tell Tommy. Eleanor turned to me, her eyes glistening. I'd like to make this right, Olivia. Not just today, but moving forward. These children. All of them. They deserve better than my prejudice. James appeared in the doorway, holding another album we hadn't opened yet. Mom, look what I found, he said, setting it on the counter. Rose's wedding album, including the pages about when she married Henry's father, her stepfather, who raised her after her own dad passed away. Eleanor's hand flew to her mouth. What? Seems the Cooper family tradition of choosing love over blood goes back even further than we thought, James said with a gentle smile. Rose wasn't Henry's biological mother, but that didn't make their family any less real. The revelation seemed to hit Eleanor like a physical blow. She sank into a kitchen chair, staring at the album. All this time, she whispered. All these years of pushing for pure family lines, and I didn't even know. Sarah joined us, carrying empty plates from the yard. Mom, the kids want to make this a monthly thing, Cooper Cousins Day. But they want to do it right this time, everyone included, no exceptions. Eleanor nodded, tears flowing freely now. Yes, she said firmly. Yes, that's exactly what we'll do. And I'd like to start some new traditions too. Something to honor what Rose started. Over the next hour, as the sun began to set over the lake, we all sat together planning. Eleanor suggested a family tree project, one that would document not just births but choices, all the moments when love expanded the Cooper family beyond blood. The children contributed ideas for activities and outings, no longer constrained by artificial divisions. As we were packing up to leave, Eleanor disappeared upstairs and returned with a small wrapped package. Emma, Lucas, she called softly. I have something for you. They approached cautiously, the day's joy tempered by years of past hurt. Inside the package were 2 silver lockets, clearly antique. These belonged to Rose, Eleanor explained, her voice thick with emotion. She gave them to me when Robert and I married, saying they should be passed down to the children who needed a special reminder that they were chosen for this family. She fastened them around my children's necks with trembling fingers. I should have given these to you years ago. Emma touched her locket gently, opening it to find a tiny space for photos. Can we put today's picture in it? She asked. The one with all the cousins. Of course, sweetheart, Eleanor replied, pulling both children into a tight hug. And many more to come. As we drove home that evening, Emma and Lucas chatted excitedly about the sleepover plans while James followed in his car behind us. The box of albums sat in our trunk. Eleanor had insisted we take them home, saying it was time these stories were shared openly. Mom, Emma said suddenly, her voice serious. Do you think Grandma Eleanor really means it? About changing? I glanced at her in the rearview mirror, seeing Rose's locket gleaming at her throat. I said carefully, that sometimes people need to be reminded of their own stories before they can open their hearts to others. And I think your Grandma Eleanor just remembered a very important part of hers. The truth was, I didn't know if Eleanor's transformation would stick, if years of prejudice could really be undone by one afternoon of revelations. But I did know that something fundamental had shifted in our family's foundation. The walls of exclusion had cracked, letting in light that couldn't easily be shut out again. Later that night, after the children were in bed, I found James looking through the albums again. You know what's funny? He said, pulling me close. All these years, Mom talked about protecting the Cooper family legacy. Today, because of you and these albums, we finally discovered what that legacy really is. I leaned into him, thinking of Emma and Lucas sleeping peacefully upstairs, their new lockets holding the promise of belonging. Sometimes the greatest family traditions aren't the ones we're born into, but the ones we choose to create together. And sometimes it takes looking back at our past to find the courage to build a better future.